Hello, it's Maya Andreasen, and for today's demo we are going to be going over some animation basics, how to use the graph editor, how to add simple attributes to a control, how to add blend shapes properly. Prior to Maya, or after Maya 2016 or 2017, they kind of changed how blend shapes were created, so we're going to be going over how to do that correctly because they don't work the old way in terms of how to make them. We'll be going over copying keys and how to change your tangents and other fun things of that nature. Let me just show you a simple bouncing ball. So it's not perfect, but we're going to just kind of go over how I made it. I applied blend shapes to it so that we could get the squash and stretch. I then applied those blend shapes to the simple control I created for the bounce from the bouncy ball, and the very simple rig. So we're going to be going over that step by step, and let's get started. So here we have a very simple rig setup for the ball that you just saw bouncing. This is just a simple NURBS circle, and let me turn on X-ray joints so you could just see what the joints are. It's just two simple joints and a locator. The locator is constrained to the bottom joint here, and it's actually it's parent constrained, and it's actually what is driving the joint. And then the locator itself is parented to the control. And if we take a look at it over here, really I should name that CC underscore ball 01, CC standing for control curve. We can see that here is the locator that is parented to the ball control, and then there's just the two simple joints, and I'm just gonna group this and call this ball rig, and then this is our ball Geo, and we're gonna put that in there too. So we have all of these things together, and if we want to, we can move our ball and we can rotate our ball. Now I have turned off the video of myself because there's certain areas when animating that you guys are going to need to see, and the video would cover up. So over here on the lower right hand, in the lower right hand corner, we have something called auto key. So I just depressed it, and if I press it, once we make a keyframe, whenever we move our control in another frame, it'll automatically keyframe it as well. Things that you should take a look at are your frames per second. Right here, it says 24 frames per second. If I click this little drop down, you can actually change the frames per second very quickly. Typically, so for film, it's 24 frames per second. For video, it's 30 frames per second. And you'd use 60 frames per second. Normally, if you're in games, you could use it. And high quality film, but we're just going to keep it to 24 frames per second right now, so it's an easy way to change it. Just a recap of the animation time slider here. So this narrows in on sections of the timeline. So right now we can see frames 1 to 120. If I move this, is now frames 40 to 159. And you can see also here this inside box indicates that the start frame here, or the frame that we're zeroed in on, is 40. And here, this inside box on the right, it says 159. If you want the time slider to be the entire timeline, there's two ways to do it. You can either type in the frame you want it to end at, which in this case is 200, or you can literally left mouse press this little light gray box here next to 40, and drag. So left mouse press and drag, and then so you can manually change your time slider there. And now here we have it 1 to 200. If you want to add frames, you can either add it in this inside or this outside box here on the right. So you could do, I want 500 frames, or you could do the same here. And now we see all 500 frames. So I don't need 500 frames. I'm just going to put it down to 100 and this as well. All right, so that's the time slider. Now this is the actual timeline here from 1 to 100. If you right mouse press on the timeline, you get a marking menu or a pop-up menu that comes up. Here you can cut keyframes, copy them, paste them. You can delete them. You can snap to things. You can convert things to keys and breakdowns. You can add in-betweens. You can change your tangent curves from here in the actual timeline. They have a grease pencil feature, cache playback. You can change your playback speed, which is really important when animating, and also when animating FX, so particle effects. You would be changing these parameters. And there's a number of other options as well. And this is also where you would create a play blast. So if you click this little options box here, it brings you to the play blast section, and you can make it a QuickTime or an AVI. You can add encoding if you want, or you can have no encoding and take it into an editing software and add encoding later. You can lower or raise the quality. The display size, you can either have it from the window or your actual render settings, or you can make custom display size. You can scale it so that it's 1:1. You can add frame padding, so frame padding of 4 would be 0001, 0002. So it's actually 4 integers for numbers. So you can go up into the thousands in terms of numbering. So if you had 1,000 frames, I would do frame padding of 5 just to be on the safe side. And then lastly, you can save your file and browse to where you want it to be saved. So we're not going to do that right now. Okay, so we have our ball, and we've already done a simple rig to it, but what we need to do is we need to add some squash and stretch features to it, and I'm going to add that using our blend shapes option. So we're going to go to sculpting here. This is the first thing we're going to do. I'm also going to select my ball. So we're going to go to sculpting, and if you go to sculpting, there's this icon here, and it's called the shape editor. Okay, and if we click on the shape editor, it's going to open up, and this allows us to make blend shapes. And as you can see, we have a create blend shape option here. Now in order to create the blend shape, you do need to have your object selected. So with the object selected, we are going to create a blend shape. So this is our main blend shape. If we want to rename it, then what we can do is we can right mouse press, and you get this pop-up menu, and you could do rename. So this, I'm going to just call it ball blend shapes. That's what it's going to be called, and I'm going to hit enter. Okay. And then what we want to do is we want to add targets. So the targets are going to be the actual blend shapes. So when I press target or add target, you see that our we have it says ball 1, so that's the object. I am going to rename it. This is going to be my actual blend shape. This is going to be my squash blend shape. It says edit, and it has a value of 1. So this is really important. So when our ball is not animated and it's at its static shape, it's at 0. And when our blend shape is at its largest or most extreme, it's going to be at 1. And because it says edit right now, we can actually create that blend shape. Now in order to create blend shapes, you do need to be in component mode. So we're going to go to component mode, and we're going to select all our components. So for a squash, what we want to do is we are going to flatten it, but when you flatten an object, it also gets expands outward. So I'm going to expand it outward as well. Let's try and make it look like a circle, or as close to a circle as possible. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move it. I'm going to move it so that it is level with the ground. Let's go to front view and go like this. All right, now if all worked properly, we can unclick edit and we can experiment and see, and look at this. So when we do the little the little slider here, we can see that indeed we get a squash. If you want to make further edits to your blend shape, all you have to do is click the edit button again and go into component mode. It's just that easy. So we're going to add another target, and this target, so remember, right mouse press and select rename, is going to be stretch. So this is going to be our stretch one. Now we do want to put this at 0 before we start editing. So I've put my squash at 0, and now I can affect my stretch. So we're going to select all of my components again, and this time I'm going to make it long, but once again, it's going to, so instead of expanding, it's going to contract on the inside here because we are stretching. So it's going to contract significantly, right? So this is my squash, or this is my stretch, and I'm also going to move it so that it is even. So let's go to front view, and that's about level there. And I think this is pretty good for this simple tutorial. So I'm going to unclick edit, and we're going to see, make sure this can go back to 1, and indeed it does. So it goes to 1. So let's just save this. It's always important to save scene. So we're going to do ball anim, and we can do blends, right? I don't want to overwrite it on my other version. So we have this. Okay. All right. So now that we have our blend shapes, really we can access them quite easily through the shape editor. And in fact, you can actually do keyframes here. So if I right mouse press on the 0 here, you can see that you can set a key. So you can set a key. You can do set driven keys, you can create, you can lock attributes, you can create an expression for it, you can do all that stuff. And you do that for this as well. So you can set keys in your shape editor, but you could also set keys by adding an attribute to your controls. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to hide actually. Lock and hide my scale and my visibility. I don't need them. And then I'm going to go to edit, add attribute. And this is the add attribute window. And I'm going to add squash. It's going to be keyable, right? So that you can put keyframes on it. Float. The minimum is going to be 0. The maximum is going to be 1. And we're going to click add. And now you can see in my channels box that I have a squash attribute. And now we're going to create stretch. Once again, keyable float, minimum 0, maximum of 1. And the reason the maximum is 1 and it's not like blank or 5 or something like that is, if you remember, we set our keyframe at 1 for our maximum blend shape, and then at 0 for our default shape. So that's why we're making the minimum 0. That's the default of the ball, and the maximum is 1. And then we click OK. So we have these. However, these don't do anything. So I hit 1, nothing happens. So we need to make some connections. So I'm going to go to Window, General Editors, Connection Editor. So this is the connection editor, and usually when the connection editor opens up, let me just make it default, it's going to look like this, which is really confusing and alarming initially. So what you're going to want to do is go to left display and uncheck show non-keyable. We're not keying, we're not going to make any connections between any non-keyable attributes right now. We're not going to do that. So the next thing we want to do is we actually want to select our ball, because we need to get the blend shapes. So we're going to connect the ball's blend shapes to the squash and stretch attributes that we added. So I'm going to select my ball, and we go over here to our inputs and we see ball blend shapes. So I'm going to select them and reload right. And once again, we have all this stuff. So I'm going to go to write display and uncheck show non-keyable. So now we have something that it makes a lot more sense. So to find the blend shapes, you're going to go under the weight option here. So you're going to click this little plus sign within the circle, and we're going to select squash, and then stretch, and close. It's just that simple. So now when we select our control, we should be able to, if I hit control and yeah, look at that. Control and left mouse press, I'm able to squash and I'm able to stretch. And what's great about this is I can keyframe it as well. So let's talk about some keyframes here and how to keyframe. So the first thing you can do is you can hit S. S is in snake or sample. That will keyframe all of your attributes in your channels. And as you can see, they are now red. Now, if we were to go over to frame 100, and I was to hit W, I have turned on my auto key. So if I go all the way over here, it's not that far, we can see that we have added some animation. It's very slow. And I don't know if you can notice it, but it starts out kind of slow and then it speeds up. That's called ease in and ease out. And that is automatically applied to all animated tangents. So what's a tangent? Well, let's go to our workspace and we're going to change it from Maya Classic to animation. So this right here is the graph editor. So we have a time editor here and we have a graph editor. Okay. So this is the time editor. And that ease in, ease out I was talking about, we can see it in action in this tangent. Now I know you guys had tangents in math class. They actually are super helpful when it comes to animating as well. Tangents can be manipulated, they can be flattened, they can be changed. There's different ways to change the tangent. So you can go here to the menu for the graph editor and you can go to tangents and you could change them here. So I could change this to linear. What that means is now my animation is going at a constant rate. So how do you know what kind of effect you're going to be getting with your tangent? So I just set this back to auto, which is the ease in, ease out. The flatter your tangent line, the less movement you will have. So the slower your object. If you have a completely flat line, that means your object's not moving. So this is almost flat. So it starts off slow and then it speeds up as it goes up this and then it tapers off and slows down again, and we can see that in action. But if I make this a linear tangent, it just goes at a constant rate. All right. So other things that we can do, we can add some animation. So if I were to go here to 52, I can raise this up, and all of a sudden, you see we get a change going on here. So we've got this. Oh, look at this. It starts here, but then it stays up there, and it's because I need to keyframe the end here. So I should have keyframed from the start at 1. I have Y at 0. But it's really easy. All we have to do is put 0 here, and voila. We have it going up and down very, very slowly. It's also going, it starts slow, speeds up, and goes down again. All right, so once again, we have an ease in and ease out with this hill. If we wanted this hill to be constant like this line, we would do the following. So I'm going to go to my translate Y. If you hit F, you can, F is in fairy or frank or fitness. You can zoom into whatever tangents you have selected or you have selected in your graph editor. So right now, if I were to select this end tangent here, so I don't know if you can see that it has two handles. So right here is the unified tangents, and they're unified. I'm going to break my tangent. So what that means is if I move this, so I'm going to middle mouse drag to move it, middle mouse press and drag to move it. If I move this, it's only moving this side of the tangent. I have not broken this tangent, so if I were to select it, oopsie, let's just select this and move it, as you can see, it moves that tangent right there. Now that becomes a problem if you add to the animation. So right now we have this starting and stopping pretty quickly. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move this over. Now if you hit shift and middle mouse drag, you can move over only in the horizontal, and if you hit shift and middle mouse drag and drag down or up, you're moving only in the vertical. So what I'm going to do is shift and drag left to right to only move in the horizontal. Okay, and then I can go over here and I can add some animation in my Y. We are at frame 18, and this is it, and I can just put in 0. Right? Oops, messed up. Let's undo if we can. There we go. Let's put 0 in here. There we go. Let's do it here instead of the graph editor, and then we see the actual change. And then we could go over here and we can lift this up, right? And we see that we have another keyframe, and we could go over here, make it 0, maybe move it out a bit, right? Then we can go over here, like move it along, bring it up a bit more, let's make it a little smaller, bring it back to 0, and so on and so forth till you just have it like tiny, tiny, tiny bounce. And bring it to 0. And then we would have it roll. But actually, to get it to roll, you need to, what I did was I made another ball, and I turned off the visibility of the current ball that I have and had the other ball do the roll. It was just the easiest thing to do. So I can show you how we did that. And I put a little visibility option on my ball control here. All right, so here we want to change a lot of these tangents. So let's go to translate Y again, and we're gonna fix that. This one is not broken, so if I were to select this handle, it does this whole thing, and that gives me some weird funky curve, which I don't want. So I'm gonna break the tangent. What we want to have are nice little hills, right? Hills that kind of look like the bounce itself. So we can just go through, break the tangent, and do that for all of these. Oh, I didn't break my tangent. See what happens when you do that? You don't get the result that you want. We're just going through. I'm going to break this tangent. Select it, bring it up. Okay, so let's take a look at how this now looks. And then we can hit F so we can zoom in on it again. All right, now we've got it bouncing. All right, so that's great. Let's just save what we have. But it's not squashing and stretching, so what we have is more like a bowling ball as opposed to like maybe a bouncy ball. So what we could do is we can apply our squash now, and so when this comes down, it's going to squash. Now we don't want it too crazy. And the other thing we need to remember is that before it lands, we need to set a keyframe. So I'm going to right mouse, select squash, right mouse press, and key selected. Then I'm going to go to my actual squash, and let's see what happens if I make it 1, it's really flat. So let's make it 0.5, and it should keyframe in it, and it did. And then we're going to go to the next keyframe. Now I can right mouse press, or I can go channel key selected. That also will set the keyframe. So now I have a squash, but I didn't set the keyframe at 0, so there we go. So here we go. So it bounces, and then here, right before it lands, we're going to key selected and go to the squash and maybe make it 0.4. You know, I don't know. Maybe we'll do a 0.3. We're going to play around and see how squishy it looks. And then at our next frame, we'll put it at 0. And then we're going to go right over here, the frame before it, key select. I'm going to do maybe 3, sure, and then right after 0. And we have one more bounce, so right before, let's key select. Let's do 0.2, and all right, so let's see what this looks like from the beginning. So it is bouncing. It's not stretching, it's not, you know, rotating or anything like that, so we do want to do that. So on the way down, right, we want this guy to stretch a bit. So probably maybe here would be the height of its stretch. Definitely going to keyframe it here. And then, I don't know, let's try 0.5. That seems really stretchy. Yeah, let's do 0.3. I think that's more reasonable. And 0. And we obviously also want it to rotate a bit. So where are we going to rotate it? It's going to be in the Z, I believe, so we should probably keyframe it. Let's see what that looks like. Do it like this. This isn't really correct, but I want to figure that out right now. Right, and so here, let's do it like that. All right, so let's see, that's probably too extreme. Yeah, it's a little too extreme, so I have to play around with it because but you get what I'm saying. You saw the example that I showed initially. Now, if I wanted to make all of this animation shorter, and by the way, this is an issue, right? So maybe we move that a bit. That's the rotate. Okay, so and also if I selected this rotate real fast, we would definitely want to fix the ease in and ease out. Like, that's part of the issue and part of the reason why it looks so funky. So we can fix that. So it does look a little bit better. All right, so we'll pretend like all of this is beautiful. It's all fixed. I love it. It's great. How would I copy keyframes or shrink it down or anything like that? So if I hit R, R is scale. And once again, I'm going to hit Shift. I can actually stretch all the animation, or I can shrink it so it's shorter and it happens evenly, right? So I can do that with this. And so now this is all shorter, and then I can move all of the keyframes. So it's actually a shorter animation. And let's move our time slider to 80. So now it's a much faster animation. We can copy frames. So let's go to 160 here. So with all these keyframes copied, you're going to want to stop your this little yellow line where your last frame is. So if I hit Control C to copy and Control V, as you can see, I have now perfectly copied all of this animation. So it's just going to repeat itself. So if you had something like a walk cycle, this is really important. Now, for some reason, my translate X got a little crazy, right? It's just not going anywhere, and then it moves back. So maybe what we can do is we can delete that. And so now it's going to continue its jump this way. So if we really wanted to repeat this properly, we'd have to have like we'd have to change this around a bit. But for a walk cycle or a run cycle, this would be how you would copy and paste the frames. If you have you've gotten your walk cycle, and now you want your character to move forward or go along a path. So you could do it that way. Okay, so let's take a look at one last thing. I believe it's this guy. Sure, we'll save this. All right, so this is the ball I started with. Let's move this down a bit. So I have a ground here, so we see that we have a ground plane and all this fun stuff. And what I've done is I've actually made everything invisible here. So I can bring back all, and that's going to show my control. And something that I also added is I make the visibility disappear. So when this lands, if you look over here, I added an attribute called Geo Visibility. And now the visibility is at 0 because there is another ball in the scene. And that ball has animation, and that animation rolls. And the way I added the visibility to that control, let's go back here so we see everything a little bit more, is once again, you're going to select the control and you do edit, add attribute. So I did Geo Visibility. And the minimum is 0. The maximum is 1. And the default is 1. And the reason the default is 1 is because you want it to be visible. And we're going to click OK. All right, so now we're going to go to Window, General Editors, Connection Editor. So we have our Geo Visibility. And then we're going to add our ball again. And we'll go Geo Visibility, Visibility. So now if I go 0, my ball disappears. And if I go 1, it is visible. So those are just some animation basics. I'm going to open a walk cycle that you guys can see, and we'll just kind of reiterate, re-go over how you can copy and paste frames. Okay, so we have our character here that I mentioned that had a walk cycle. So let me start that walk cycle so you all can see. And here she is. She's just walking away. You don't see any controls because I've turned them off, but if I show NURBS curves, you can see that I have all the controls here. And if I select all my controls, let's not have the camera or the light selected, then you can see all of the animation curves here. So just to reiterate, if you want to copy curves with animation on them, you can select them. Make sure you go to the end frame where you want your pasted curves to start. And you can either go Control C and Control V, Control C to copy, Control V to paste, or you can go to the graph editor menu here and go Edit, Copy, and then Edit, Paste. And then as you see, we have a nice walk cycle here. And so if I make this go to 70, you can see that my character is going to walk until 70. I'm actually going to make this go to 100 just so that you can see she gets, you know, multiple walks in here. And we'll turn off the NURBS curves. Right? So that's how you can copy these frames. And then if I wanted to make another copy, so I can Control V, you know, because I already copied those keyframes. And now she is continuing to walk. So let's go to 120, see what we have here. Right? And so now she's walking for a longer amount of time. So that's how you can copy and paste keyframes fairly easily. And we've gone over how to create blend shapes, how to do simple animation, how to affect the tangents of your curves. And until next time, I'm Maya Andreasen. Bye-bye.